Now, back in the mid-1960s, much was happening in music. We had lots of creative records which used the technology that was available. Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, for example, using a 4-track tape recorder and then an 8-track latterly, which was basically the lap of luxury. Now, I'm going to today record only onto tape. Now, how I'm going to do this is I'm going to record 4 tracks on my 8-channel recorder there, which is on the left-hand side of your main screen. Now, the reason I'm only going to use 4 is that I'm going to try and see how far I can go with just 4 tracks. Now, I'm going to record some drums, some bass, a couple of guitars, and then I'm going to use the machine on the right here, I've got the ReVox A77, which is going to take a mix of those 4 tracks. Then I'm going to transfer the ReVox back onto a fresh track on the 8-track, leaving me another 3 tracks. There are other methods of doing this as well, but this really what this does is it encourages the sort of thought process that you would need to go through in order to sort of work out how you're going to mix your tune, what parts you're going to have, how you're going to do them. So I'm going to start off with just a bit of drums, and then you can hear the other tracks going on there. Now, on the machine over here, I've got track 1, which is ready. You can see a little red flashing light at the bottom. I don't know if you can see that there. Now, if I hit the drum with the stick, wherever I put my sticks, there we go, you can see that there is a level appearing on the tape machine on track 1. Now, I only have one mic on the drums here, none of this multi-miking stuff. I've got a C3000, which is sort of diagonally pointing down to the bass drum, level with the snare, and that seems to get a pretty good balance of those 3 drums. I've just got bass, snare, and hi-hat, so 2 drums and a hi-hat. So here we go. Okay, so half a minute wasn't the best version there was, but for the purposes of this demonstration, that will do. Now, that's half a minute recorded on tape, so my next job is to go back to the beginning. Now, we live in a time now where you can just go to any point on your digital audio workstation that you would like, any point at all. But with the tape, of course, you have to rewind to go back to the beginning. Now, that has hidden benefits. It means you can actually be thinking about what you're going to do next. Now, in the creative process, it is very important to do that. And sometimes if you're just going back, literally back to the beginning, press record with a new part on a digital audio workstation, it might just get a bit sort of on top of you. You might not have time to think about, oh, maybe if I did this or did that or did the other. So, for example, if I'm doing a guitar solo on this and it's not sort of going so well, it just gives me time to have a little think, a little breather. So, next up, I'm going to put some bass down. Now, the bass is going to go on track 2. So, what I need to do is to go to my machine, switch off track 1, and make record ready, make track 2 ready to record. Now, I gave myself a count-in on the drums so that I could, so that I know where to come in. Modern day, of course, you have a metronome, which makes it much easier. You can switch it off or on, and it lines up with your tune. So, next up, some bass then. The reason I heard no sound there is because I'm actually monitoring through the tape deck, and I thought, oh, hang on, I haven't brought the channel up, and I hadn't set it into record ready either. So now you can see bass coming in on track 2. There we go. So you'll hear the drums come back. Now, the tape machine, the quality here is a little bit fuzzy, but sometimes it might give you something that you actually quite like. So you'll hear the drums and the bass. So there's my bass. Now, at this point, I should have a little clear up. Small studios mean that you can create a lot of mess very, very quickly. So now I'm going to put some guitar down. Now, I've got my old pod here, the classic sort of guitar amp simulator of the sort of late 20th century. Very useful, so that you can just decide on your sound. Now, of course, I'm recording to tape, so I can't change that sound afterwards like you can on a modern digital audio workstation. But I've got a sound that I'm going to, hopefully will work fine. So here we go. Got to make ready track 3 as well. So there we go, there's track 3. Now I'm just going to put another guitar part on track 4 before we go on. Now at this stage, if you have a 4-track tape machine only, and you've got your last track, you can do something called bouncing or ping-ponging or collapsing tracks, where you take the 3 tracks you've just recorded and mix them onto another track of your machine. And what that does is that frees up the first 3 tracks that I use to use for other things. Now, that was done. That was a method that was employed. But of course, it's risky. There is no undo button. If you go over tracks 1, 2, and 3, and you decide your mix is wrong on track 4, which is the mix of tracks 1 to 3, you kind of stumped, really. So what used to happen was that safety copies were made, just in case there was a problem and you had to go back. But of course, if you had to go back, you had to re-record everything. So this gives you an idea of quite how hard it was to make things work. So a lot of rehearsing, a lot of playing, a lot of all sorts of things. And of course, if you're just one person by yourself, it can make it even harder. So if you've got a band of trained musicians who know the tunes back to front, you know, you're in business. So I'm going to put something on track 4 now. Now I'm just going to hear track 3 back as well. And I'm just going to put a second guitar part down. Maybe I'll just change my sound slightly and see what happens. So there we go. There is track 4 now recorded. So if I've got my tape machine here running through a mixing desk, which allows, and you're not seeing this on the camera because it's the process that's more important rather than the sort of the technical nitty gritty. But I'm going to play back this recording now, and just do a basic mix. And this is where my other machine up here, my ReVox A77, comes into its own, because it's going to essentially record the 4 tracks mixed. So I'm just going to have a little play with the mixer. Now at this stage, you can sort of turn the input gains up to get to a real crunchy sort of sound out of your tape, and you can do any EQing here. If you've got reverbs here, then you can add those as well, but you've got to be very careful because you can't remove them afterwards. I'm not going to use reverbs now. I'm just going to do a mix of these 4 tracks. Okay, let's say I'm happy with that. I just brought up that second guitar because it was a little bit low. Now, I've got another mic over here that I'm going to do some backing vocals on. But how am I going to do that? Because I've run out of tracks. Remember, I'm thinking that I've got a 4-track here, but I haven't. I've got an 8-channel machine. So I'm going to transfer what I've just mixed onto this ReVox here. And then I can play that back. So just make sure I'm there with my... there we go, with my mix. So here we go. Of course, at this stage, it is customary to tune one's instruments up before we start, but yeah, it's a bit sort of gritty and... Okay, so now I've loaded that onto the ReVox machine, I'm going to go back and have a little listen to it just to make sure that mix has come out okay. Here we go. So I'll just fast forward a little bit. Here we go. It's actually slightly over-recorded, but I'm going to keep it because I quite like that. It's just a bit fizzy and crunchy and foul. Lovely. Now, I'm going to transfer that. Now I've got a fresh piece of tape here. I'm just going to fast forward this one on a little bit and reset my counter. I'm going to put this tune, I don't know, let's pick track 5 maybe. So I'm going to use the last 5 tracks of my recorder. So what I've got to do first is to check, obviously, that the level's going on there from the ReVox, hopefully, and then we can see what happens from there. So I'm going to just do a little bit of resetting of my desk. I'm going to play that mix back and just have a little listen, see if it's coming in. Sounds like it is. So track 5 of the Fostex. That's wrong. Okay, so I'm going to go back and just play that ReVox mix back onto this machine. Now, every time you transfer between tape machines, you're going to lose a bit of the fidelity, you'll lose some of the quality, you'll get speed variations, you get all sorts. You might even wear the tape out if you do this enough. So there are sort of technological constraints here, but it makes it much more fun. So here we go. I'm going to transfer this from the ReVox back onto the 8-channel recorder. Here we go. I mean, that is just purely revolting. Now, my chord chart is written on the back of a PRS envelope. Look at that. So I'm going to just put a few backing vocals on now. So I'm going to make use of the fact that I've got my 4-track machine back. I've used only one channel for the mix of this. So we're in mono here as well. But I don't mind. I think it sounds cool. It sounds fine. So I'm going to put my backing vocals up here, and I've now got a mic over here that I'm going to record the backing vocal parts. So switch off track 5 here, and I'm going to make ready track 6. So this would be like my second track of my 4-track machine. So here we go with the mic. So I'm just going to make sure I've got that mic working. There we go. You can see it on track 6 of the Fostex now. So this is track 5 is my mix. Track 6 is going to be my first of 3 backing vocals. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the beginning on this. So here we go. So there's my first backing vocal. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and make ready track 7 now. So I'm just going to play this slightly because there's a little bit of a delay. So this is the other thing where, there we go, where you can waste a bit of time if you haven't found the right place on the tape machine. There's a lot of silence. You can find that you can add minutes to a session, even hours to a session, with just the fast forwarding, the rewinding, the finding the right place, all that sort of thing. So here is the second backing vocal. One, two, two. I made a little mistake on that, so I'm going to go back and do it again. I didn't do the harmony part on the second half of that, which I wanted to do. Here we go. So take 2. So I'm going to record over that. Now, at this point, there is no undo button on this. There's no such thing. So once you've done something, if you've recorded over something and you think, oh, no, I want to go back, you can't. You've got to do it all, you just go over the top of what you've just done. So now I'm going to go on to the last track of my 4-track machine here, as it would have been. So this is what they had in the 1960s to do stuff. The 8-track machine was really sort of mid-60s and onwards, and only the very sort of most expensive studios had them. And here we are, we're able to record 32 audio tracks on iOS GarageBand. It's quite the kids don't know the sort of luxury that they have with this. But as I said, the creativity angle is really important when you're doing something like this, that you sort of think about the stages that you go through. So here is the final track. So this is just, this is an example. It's just 8 bars and, I didn't sing that very well. I could go back and do it again, but the process is the same. Now, if I wanted to, I could mix this. I could do another mix of this back onto my ReVox machine, and I could come back in and put some other sound effects or other guitars or a solo over the top. You can keep repeating the process, but be aware that, of course, every time you do it, you lose a bit of quality on the tape, because tape has noise, wow and flutter, all sorts of distortions, all sorts of little niggly bits and pieces. But who knows what you'll get at the end, and that's the fun of it. Now, I could just do a little bit of a mix of my vocals. Now, I could decide to maybe pan those vocals slightly and then record in stereo on my ReVox, and then bring that into 2 channels of my Fostex to maintain those vocals sort of bouncing about. But the bass, the guitar, and the drums, they are all absolutely dead set mono. There's nothing stereo about them at all. So there it is. There's a little demonstration of how we use 2 tape machines to get more tracks.